Today in episode 68 of the podcast, we will be reviewing Ryan Coogler's vampire film Sinners, giving an early look at The Accountant 2, and reviewing the season finale of Daredevil Born Again. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and this is We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Before we jump into reviews, as always, please don't forget to give us a like and subscription on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you're getting our episodes when they drop every single Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio realm, please give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com where you can get access to all of our archive footage, our social media information, as well as our merch store so you continue to support the show in that way. We can't thank you enough for your continued support.
And we just want to give a reminder that we do have a giveaway running through the end of the month. You have till May 3rd to enter, so you can win a bottle of Mike's Hot Honey, extra hot honey, or a Gold Star gift card worth $25 each. We're going to have 4 winners. Make sure you get in there and enter. We're actually throwing in a movie trivia card game that'll be pretty fun for each winner as well. So make sure you go to willbringthepopcorn.com/giveaway and get your entries in before it's too late.
So now we want to jump into our reviews this week. We're starting off with the Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan film, Sinners. So this is a movie that takes place in the early 1930s in the South in Mississippi, and it follows the story of Smoke and Stack, who are both played by Michael B. Jordan, who plays twin brothers here. And you get some backstory into this movie that, there's an old legend that there are certain people that are blessed with musical abilities that are able to bridge gaps between the real world and, the underworld. And that's kind of the whole theme around this movie, right? Is, it's just so good, man. I don't even know where to begin to describe this movie other than just showering it with as much praise as possible, because I remember coming out of this movie thinking this might have been the best horror movie I've seen in several years. And it's kind of like a tale of two movies, though, because it kind of starts out as like a southern western kind of theme to it, but it really jumps into horror about midway through, and it's a fantastic movie all around.
I'll go right ahead and say I absolutely love this. It was such a unique take on a horror vampire film. It is a very slow burn. It starts off really slow. As you said, 1930s Mississippi. You've got, Jim Crow stuff going on and everything. You've got, it's very southern, dealing with religion, dealing with just how life was in the South as we're building up, that we learned that Smoke and Stack, they had left for a while, went to Chicago dealing with Capone and gangsters and everything else, but they came back home, and you get a little more depth into kind of why they left Chicago a little bit there. But it is a very slow burn as it kind of sets up our world and our universe here. But I absolutely loved how music was its own character in this film. The score, musical, it's not a musical, but music is extremely important to this. As you said, there are people who have such soul and connection to music that they can open up the veil between the living and the dead, between the past and the future, between all these different elements, and it plays off so well. The sound and audio outside of the music and everything else was just so amazing. It got big and loud when it needed to, and was soft and gentle when it needed to, and then the songs just, of course, a lot of classic old blues songs, but there's such an interesting dynamic between blues and Irish folk and everything else that's done this movie, and I just love that combination and what he did with this film. It was so well acted. I mean, you had such an amazing cast. You got Haley Steinfeld in there as Mary, who's playing the ex of Stack, I believe it was. Yeah. And then you have Jack O'Connell's Remick, so we end up finding a bit more about him. But I want to give some love to Delroy Lindo as Delta Slim. You've got Wunmi Masaku, which again, sorry if I butcher her name, is Annie. And then Miles Canton was such a big standout of his. This was his acting debut, but he was really fantastic playing Preacher Boy.
Yeah, just an incredible performance by him as well. And like you said, they use music in such a wonderful way as a narrative drive for a lot of this story. And music is very prominent throughout the film, and it's subtle in carrying a story when it needs to, and then it's front and center for for a decent chunk of it to kind of help drive the narrative as well. And it's just so brilliantly, fused together and married into the story. And, kind of jumping into the plot a little bit here. So like you said, you have Smoke and Stack coming back home to Mississippi, having generated what appears to be enough wealth to start like a speakeasy. That's what they want to put together. They call it Club Juke. Yeah. They call it a juke joint. And the whole premise is them coming back to set up this huge party so they can hopefully make enough money to, move forward. And, it's a real fun premise and setup, and it feels like they take the reputations that these are the Smokestack twins that are coming back to kind of take over the town a little bit, and they have a reputation. They carry it a bit with them, and I gotta say, man, Michael B. Jordan really carries a lot of the movie that he's in, and he's just so prominent as both characters. And I love how he incorporates each person's personality differently depending on which character he's portraying. And he does a brilliant enough job of having these two characters who, while twins, have different dynamics to their personality. It's not like he's playing the same person twice, and they each have their own unique, mannerisms, their own unique way of looking at things, their own unique, characteristics. And he just does such a good job of playing both of them off of each other in a lot of scenes with himself. He does such a good job at this that. It's so brilliantly shot. Visually, the film was stunning as well.
Cinematography was beautiful.
They use brightness when it makes sense. They really encapture darkness in a way that makes a lot of sense too, and just a beautifully shot film, man. I came away so impressed out of this movie.
Oh, absolutely. And it was one that I wasn't expecting. It only takes place about a day and a half. So you start early in the morning going into morning the next day and stuff. So it's a kind of a all-encompassing tale on this day of they've come back to Mississippi. They're buying this barn or this sawmill that they're going to turn into a juke joint, and they're going around getting everybody they need. They need singers, they need musicians, they need everything else. And there's a lot of humor in it. There's a lot of darkness and heart and stuff too. But I love like the interactions with Delta Slim as he's playing with harmonica and trying to get him on. So he's going to offer him some beer that he's never had before. It's like, ooh, hold on. Like, give me that. Like, he did such a fantastic job as Delta. There was nobody who was out of place in this film. Everybody performs so well. And even when you get into the horror and the vampire stuff, like, you get to learn that, and this is some light spoilers for it, that you have a Native American tribe, the Choctaws, who are basically vampire hunters. They're searching for Remick, and I thought we were going to see him a little bit more, but it kind of makes sense. You get to see the fear that it's getting to nighttime, and they know that we got to get home, we got to get to safety, because when it comes to nighttime, they're near undefeatable. So you get a brief look into it, which I thought was fun. I thought maybe we would see them a little bit more than we did, but it was still fun that you've got a lot of different viewpoints and stuff you could have here. And as you said, with Smoke and Stack, Smoke is dealing with different things than Stack is, and they each have kind of their own respect. Like, they're very similar in many ways, but you have each one, like, one's more sympathetic to, hey, they're paying with these nickels, they're paying with this stuff, we got to let it go. Like, they worked hard for this money, and they worked hard for this stuff they have. We've got to accept it, even though it causes them some hardships. But it does a good job of showing you just kind of how hard life is for everybody in that time and age, and kind of how important this was to them. This was something for them, for their culture, for their people, to be able to let loose and let go and just kind of be free and let themselves enjoy blues and music as it was. And like I said, Miles Canton was such a deep, he's performed with her, and he's got his own musical career, but he hasn't done acting and stuff before. And he held his own with a pretty stacked cast of some really solid actors. With Michael B. Jordan, Haley Steinfeld was great, and the whole that she, the role that she got to do. But it was just like, it gripped me from the beginning moments. Like, I just loved that integration of music and how it spoke to your soul and their souls, and just how music is connected to people and generations and everything else. Like, it did everything so well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different subtlety and themes that, if you're paying attention, you pick up on that. he does a good job of incorporating into this film. You know, Ryan Coogler doesn't have a ton of feature films under his belt as a director. I mean, he's really only done, you know, Creed, the Black Panther films. He was a producer on Judas and the Messiah, which is another fantastic film. But as far as like behind the director's chair completely, it's only like his fifth film.
And this was his first like real original that's not tied to any other franchise. Of course, Creed coming from Rocky, and we know Black Panther.
Yeah, and you just see the talent that he has as a filmmaker and the way that he shoots movies. Like he has a very unique style that's come across in other ones, but this is his first like real original foray into stuff like this as a director, and he just knocked it out of the park. I can't give enough praise to this movie. Like they do such a good job of world building in the first half of the movie, and then when they get to the vampire stuff, they get into a real fear. Like this isn't a jump scare type of horror movie, but they do fear through visual and, you know, verbal presentations and, you know, mood and lighting and atmosphere,
like
and
manipulation from Remick and everything.
Yeah, it's more like psychological and, you know, just playing on the, you know, the family you care about me kind of stuff. And it was just written in a very smart way. It's a very smart movie too. Like it's fun, it's funny, it's very funny in a lot of ways, and it's very like scary at the same time. Like
it does get bloody and gory.
Yeah, like it gets brutal and it gets violent and it gets, you know, like they're not afraid to go there when they need to. And it's just such a well put together movie, man. I can't give enough praise that I came away so impressed out of this film. This was a really cool, like, original take on a vampire story that we haven't really gotten something similar to this in a while. Like I said, it's like after thinking about it, it's become one of my favorite like horror films I've seen in quite a while. That is thought provoking, is, you know, just well shot. The cinematography, you could tell it had a higher budget than, you know, a lot of the other horror movies that may have come out, but it's clean and polished in a good way. Like, you know what I mean? In a way that just real effective storytelling, really great use of visuals. I can't say enough good things about it.
And it deals with a lot of like the Southern belief in spirituality and voodoo and other stuff like that in that area. Because you get Annie, who's kind of a more, I guess, spiritual healer who deals with a lot of different things. So she's kind of moving forward with knowledge of exactly what's going on. And you know, we get a great mixture of a lot of kind of different people. And just again, the music was, I even went up when I was working Friday, I turned on the soundtrack just to listen to it because really it was so good. But it was so well incorporated into everything. So the score itself became a character. It became something that you paid attention to because it really helped move things along. Like it played a big importance. Again, as I said, it'll be soft when it needs to and be loud when it needs to, and it really helps move you forward. And there's actually a few surprises that I'm not going to go into and spoil that I wasn't expecting, especially when you start getting into the switch over to the horror elements of how they did a few things of like showing off how the music bridges the gap between the veil and things that it mixes in and throws in, especially one of the main songs in there. Like, okay, this adds a very different, unique element to this story of showing just how that the music is a crucial part of this story. And they said the blues and everything they played was just so fantastic. You had, you know, several female singers, which I forget her name now, which I didn't. Unfortunately, I forgot to put her in here. So ended up becoming a love interest for Preacher Boy, but she sang fantastically and was so good as well. But yeah, once it got into this horror elements, it definitely you got more tension and you got more feeling and you got without being told, you're figuring out, okay, so when the vampires take over somebody, you get to see exactly how it works in this world. It's a little bit different. They got memories and you've got connections between them all because you see this kind of
spiritual connection,
unified spiritual connection between song and dance and everything else that's going on. Like I said, I just love that dynamic, that vampire side, because Remick is from like Ireland and from around there, so you've got Irish folk being the kind of the main music of the vampires, but you got blues and, you know, Delta blues being for everybody else there, and it adds such an interesting contrast because they're, you know, vastly different, but they marry well because even Like I listen to Glenn Hansard and a lot of Irish folk and folk rock music now because it has such a connection, a heart, and the same thing as blues. It's speaking to your soul. So you've got two different musics that are very different in style, but at the core, they're very similar with their messages and how they go about building that music and the songs and stuff. And I thought that was such a great contrast that he put in there.
Yeah, it's such a powerful addition to a movie that I think in some ways a lot of like modern movies it gets lost sometimes. Like a great soundtrack can really help enhance a story, and I think a person that has done a great job of that is Ryan Coogler, because I think of some of the most iconic like recent soundtracks to movies. The other one that comes to mind is the Black Panther soundtrack that was absolutely incredible and matched that movie so well. Like it was another one of those juggernauts that like when it came out, people were talking about, yeah, the movie was great, but the soundtrack is just as incredible. Like I really think Ryan Coogler is one of the few like modern directors that has the ability to marry music and cinema in a way that it can have some incredible songs enhance the story that you're trying to tell. And I think he's got a really good formula that he's put together. And I'm kind of excited to see where he goes from here after this one. Like what other types of movies he's going to make, because I know you and I we've been hyping this movie for a while, ever since we heard about it. If you can go back in our archives and hear us talk about it quite a bit, but this is one of those rare times that we really hype up a movie and get it hyped up in us. And I think it not only met, but it might have even exceeded the expectations that I had for it. Because, you hear period vampire piece, it can be kind of stiff. Like, this is very much not a Nosferatu movie, like, at all. And Nosferatu was a great movie in its own right, but this is a completely different take on the vampire lore and kind of a modern period piece type film that just really does a really great job of telling the story that it wants to tell in a practical way that is thought-provoking. It's intense. It ramps up the intensity when it needs to. It has that horror element without needing to rely on jump scares. Like I said, this is a horror film that's not a jump scare horror movie. I had a couple people ask me about that. They're like, is it one of those jump scare type horror movies or whatever? And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, but it is horror, but it's more psychological. It's more like, it makes sense when you go see it, but man, they did such a good job with this.
Yeah, absolutely. It lived up and exceeded expectations for me. And I don't want to spoil who it was, but it was great seeing in this film a legendary blues name. Like, he inspired so many people throughout the years. It was incredible to see. Yeah, blues has been at the heart of this film, and you get someone like that to appear in the movie who I don't think's really ever done much acting or shown up in much of anything. So you get him to do it. Like, that was just really fantastic to see him show up.
Yeah, it was a cool moment for sure. And if you do go see this film in theaters, there is a mid-credit scene that does kind of allude to what you mentioned there. There also is a post-credit scene that's not really integral to any story necessarily, but it's a really cool like end to the film. I think was a really cool moment. But if you do go see it in theaters, definitely stick around for at least the mid-credit scene, and because I think it helps set up what could possibly be something moving forward. I don't know. It's kind of been up in the air on whether or not they're going to make a second film.
It does feel like, especially towards the ending, that it could be setting up. This could be a new franchise.
Yeah, and it could be. And I'm excited to see where they take it, if they jump through time, if they do like a time jump for something and tell a different story. That there could be more to it there for sure. But
you could tell it through different generations and different time periods and different locations and areas. Because, I mean, it sets up this one being, in Mississippi, but you could potentially take it in multiple different locations.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you could set this up almost anywhere, and I think it would work. And there's some more meat on the bone that they could definitely go for in that film for sure.
But Sinners, for me, sets Ryan Coogler up as being one of the big directors to keep looking out for. Whenever he puts something else out, I'm going to go see it. Because, absolutely. I mean, I've enjoyed both Black Panthers, even though some people are mixed on the second one. That was a hard situation with, the passing of your main actor and everything else to go through that. And the Creed films were fantastic. But Sinners really shows off his creativity, his uniqueness. And he told a really fantastic story that incorporated music so well, making in its own character. It was so well acted. It looked gorgeous. It looked beautiful. Like, Sinners lived up and exceeded all my expectations. I'm giving this a solid 9. Like, I think this is one of the best films of the year and one of the best horror films that I've seen in a long time.
I would agree. I was going to give it a 9 as well. it's not a completely perfect movie by any means, but it's so good at everything that it does that it's really one of the better movies that we've seen in quite a while, at least for this podcast. Like I go back to Wicked to the last time I really came away super, super impressed with how a movie was shot and, you know, and everything that incorporates it, and go figure that one is music heavy too. But like this one, it's just such a smart way of marrying music to a narrative and brilliant performances, casting spot on. And literally every person in this film played their role to the best of their capabilities in a way that was smart and really helped tie everything into the story, and just a brilliantly acted job all around. The movie was shot incredibly well. It's almost a perfect movie. Like, it's really, really, really good. I got a lot of enjoyment out of it. This one is going to have a high level of replayability for me. This will be one I watch several times. Especially, I want to go back and see more stuff and pick up things that maybe even some subtleties and things that I missed that he, incorporated in this movie as well. It's just so good, man. I want to see it again, like, soon.
As do I, and it's one I wish that we had one of the IMAX theaters around here that can do the 70 millimeter, because that's kind of how it was mainly filmed. They filmed in a bunch of different formats, so you could see it in a bunch of different ways, and I would love to be able to see that, but I think the closest one is, I think, more than 6 to 8 hours away, which would almost be worth it to see this film in. It was that good that we can't recommend it enough. Sinners is in theaters now. Please go out and see this movie. We've talked again and again, and I know we've reviewed a lot of the big tentpole movies and Marvel and DC and other stuff, but a unique original film like this deserves to be seen on the big screen. It deserves to have a big box office run. We've talked about, most films are only getting 18 days. That's 2 weekends to try to make a big impact. We want you to go out and see this film. It's well worth it. It's a great experience for the theaters because of how sound is used, and the visuals on the big screen were really fantastic. We saw it in Cinemark XD. It looks so good, but it deserves to be seen in theaters.
Absolutely. This is another one of those go support an original idea film. It may turn into a franchise, but it's got to be successful first before it does. But man, so good. Definitely worth your time to go out of your way and watch it. It is violent. It is... it is brutally violent in some ways when it gets to it. So this is definitely not one for the kids necessarily. It's a hard R for a reason, but man, it's done in such a way that makes sense with the story that they're trying to tell, and I cannot recommend this film enough. Go check it out.
I could sit here and talk about Sinners for a long time, but I don't want to give too much away about the story because it's worth having the experience in theaters to see it. So I'm going to move us on to our next review, which we got an early look at The Accountant 2. So the first Accountant movie came out in 2016. It was actually being planned in 2017 to get the sequel, but various reasons caused it not to happen until now. So you've got Ben Affleck as Christian Wolf. You've got John Bernthal as his brother Braxton. Both of those are back. Most of the main cast are back from the first film. But The Accountant 2 picks up with J.K. Simmons' King character coming back. He's at a bar waiting to meet with somebody, but appears he's gone a little too deep to his investigation, which gets some people after him. And, we get introduced to who ends up being a big player with Daniela Pineda's Anais? I forget how they pronounce her name because they didn't say it a whole lot. Her actual name is Edith, but they call her by a different name, and it goes into exactly why. But the biggest thing with this movie is it's a great dynamic between Ben Affleck and John Bernthal's brothers. Like, you didn't get that as much in the first one. You actually didn't really get them past flashbacks, which wasn't even them. It was their younger versions. You didn't really get them together until the very end of the first Accountant. So we're brought back together with them a lot quicker, and we get to spend quite a lot of the movie with them. We get to almost turn into a buddy cop movie between those two, like a very big brotherly cop, which is a good reason of what works with it. It also causes, I think, a little problems with the story just because they're so funny together and their dynamic together is so good and so great. But it's also, when you go past that buddy dynamic, it's a very dark story that they're going through. Yeah. And so while that levity is great, it's also tonally a little like, I love the funny moments, but then when you try to jump straight back into like, well, this is human trafficking, and, kids are being separated from their families and parents and held in a jail cell. Like, It creates a big contrast between two big aspects of the film.
Yeah, the humor definitely takes the edge off for the very serious thing they're trying to stop from happening, right? Yeah. So it's we don't want to get too spoilery in here because the film technically doesn't come out until this week. So we were lucky to get a more than a week advance, screening of this film, which we're incredibly thankful to get, and we could talk about it. But we kind of have to lean a little heavier into the spoiler-free version of this, right? So it's a fun movie, to be completely honest with you. We got a little spoiled this week with the movies that we saw because this is a ton of fun. I actually like this more than I did The First Accountant. Like, I really think as a movie as overall, it leans into the humor very well. Like, if you don't know, like, the dynamic behind, Christian and Braxton, they're both, they're both autistic. They both have, some of those traits that, right, wrong, or different how you feel about, non-autistic actors portraying people with autism or what have you. Like, I think they do a fine enough job of taking some of the edge off of kind of the stigma that comes with, people that could have those conditions and some of the, lack of social cues and things like that, that they really play up the humor in a big way with this. And the fact that, Ben Affleck is this, as Christian is this incredibly intelligent, man who's good at finding patterns and discovering things and, really good at investigating stuff, even though he's, an accountant brilliant with numbers and he handles all the money for some really bad people. Like, he's still a guy that tries to, do good in this situation. And, they do a great job of leveraging humor in a very, what could be a much more serious film, that they chose to make it a little lighter with the humor and, the personal, idiosyncrasies between these two characters, between Braxton and Christian, that it works. It's a very funny movie. Like, it is a very funny movie, but it's also a really good action movie too. Like, it has elements of both in it that I think marry together in a pretty good way here. I think they do a good job of that. Like, yeah, there's some, like, if you want to focus more on the serious aspect of it and think humor is not something that's necessary for this film, I get that, but that's not the type of tone of these movies anyway. They're more in the humorous, but they really elevate the humor in this film to kind of bring a little bit of a softer blow to the harder story that's, kind of at hand in the circumstances that they find themselves in.
As you mentioned, Christian is very good with patterns and numbers and stuff, but he's not so good with people. He doesn't know how.
Terrible with people.
With his autism. And I think Ben Affleck does a great job of presenting someone with autism. Like, you've got an action star with autism, which I think is great to see. Sure. And he does a great job of portraying it. I think the subtleties of how he holds himself and how he speaks, and you see little ticks and things that come out of him. And there are some very humorous moments where he just doesn't realize that he's doing what he's doing. Like, we've seen a little bit in the trailers that he ends up trying to go on some dates, but he's trying to game the system. He's using, algorithms to decide, okay, what do I need to say to these women to get them to like me? And he thinks, all right, I've got it all figured out. But, you can't find love based off of an algorithm. Right. And there's some really hysterical moments. But I think a lot of this movie does really heavily rely on that dynamic chemistry between Ben and John. Like, they play off each other so well. Fantastic. You get such a great dynamic, and it's such a great family dynamic too. Like, they've both had a hard upbringing. They've been separated for most of their life and stuff, and they're trying to figure out some sort of relationship between each other, but it's not difficult because of their issues and their autism and everything like that, and how, Christian just can't really express himself so well. And it does do a good job of going through that. And, like, when it gets into the action, it's fantastic. Like, I really appreciate, because you can see a lot of action movies when they do like a chase scene, or they have someone on a motorcycle or driving in a truck or something else, you can tell they're going like 20 miles an hour and they're like speeding up the camera or something else. Like, you can feel, like, when there's sequence on a motorcycle and a truck in the desert and stuff, like, you can feel like they're going full blast all out, hammering that gas. And I got to appreciate that, because it keeps you grounded into that reality of the action that you're going into, because they're driving 20 miles. No, and this one, you can feel the power and the speed. And when it gets to the gunplay and everything else, it's like very smart, dynamic action that they go to. And it does deal with especially a tough subject towards the end, of what they're battling against. But I think they handled it really well. It is fun. And when I brought up it's a real big contrast with the comedy to the more serious moments, because it can get really silly and fun, which I loved, but it is dealing with a very serious matter. So I can see some people like might be a little disconnected just because, like, okay, the humor is really funny, but when it gets to the dark elements, it gets really dark. And especially if you're a fan of The First Accountant, that one dealt with him trying to find where money's being embezzled and other stuff like that. And this one is very less technical on the financial side, and he's more using his gifts about finding people. He's putting together crime scenes and where people have been injured or hurt or grabbed or captured, and he's using that brilliance of his mind to kind of help put that puzzle together, which is a great different look. Like if you did another that he's just finding more embezzlement or crunching more numbers, and this way you're just retreading a little bit of what you did. It was a great way to do something different with the film while keeping the same element as you did in the first.
Yeah, for sure. And they do a good job of marrying that and kind of taking it up another level in this one. Like I said, I got to admit, I wound up enjoying this more than I did the first one, and I like the first one a lot too. Like, I wound up getting more enjoyment out of this one. Jon Bernthal is like, we'll get to it when we come up with Daredevil too. It's going to be the Jon Bernthal Love Fest hour, but my God, man, the guy just chews up almost any scene that he's in. Like, he's so good at acting with his face, like just his facial acting is incredible. He makes the best faces, but he plays intense very well. He plays straight humor very well. Like, he is so funny when he's trying to be super serious. Like,
there's some really funny moments by him. Like, he's dead serious, but it's hysterical. Like, we don't want to give it away again. It's an early review, but especially like in the truck towards the end, like there's some scenes that are just absolutely hysterical with him.
He's so good. He just chews up every scene that he is in, and having him involved more in this film is an amazing call in this. And like you said, the dynamic between the brothers and them trying to bond and trying to talk to each other, and just it's just so funny, so smartly written. Like, I had a really, really good time watching this film. Like, I was glad we got the advanced screening of it, and it just takes what the first film did so well and just kind of cranked it up a couple more notches, and we got a really fun story that is just funny, great action, and it was a joy to watch.
Yeah, I had a ton of fun with it. You also got Allison Wright returned as Justine, so this was a mute character that was helping Christian as kind of his partner, but we get a much bigger expanded role for her in this film as well, which, again, it sets up a great dynamic for stuff going forward. That it's just really interesting how they're incorporating neurodivergent people and autism and everything else to paint them in a different way. It's not solely focused on their disability or anything like that. It's focused on how they live life and are able to be highly successful and highly skilled people outside of what you may see as something that could hold them back, but they're actually thriving because of it.
Yeah, and it's a really good way of presenting that too. Like, just talking about their brilliance, which you find in a lot of cases like that like it goes beyond surface level stuff, and it does a good job of presenting that too in a way that made a lot of sense. And I was really happy to see that. They took the care to kind of highlight that, and they did a good job of that in this movie.
Yes, we've had a few movies that have dealt with autism and that kind of stuff, but it's been very different portrayals and stuff. And now you've got action stars, and you've got companies and stuff being ran and done by, and I just think it's a very interesting, different take on doing an action film when you put in those elements to it. Because I said Ben Affleck is great in it. He's got some really good things that you can see. Like, this is his autism causing him just not to know how to be a human being in some ways. Like, he just doesn't know how to interact with people. He doesn't know how to talk with people. And of course, when you get him doing that kind of stuff with Jon Bernthal right there along with him, he's like, "What are you doing? Like, come on, like you should have done this, right?" And he's like, well, no, this is no, like, very straightforward. Like, I don't realize what I did wrong, and it creates such a great funny dynamic between them, but you can see that struggle. It paints a lot of stuff in a funny way, but you can see why they struggle connecting with each other because of that.
There's a very funny scene that reminds me of, and it's no spoiler or anything, but they go to like this honky tonk bar, and a girl that he finds very attractive walks up to him and tries to start flirting with him and asks him, what song he wants the band to say it. He says this song that's absolutely not in the band's wheelhouse that he just really likes.
Metallica.
And they're like, and she walks away, and John's like, dude, she was obviously into you. Why are you messing this up? He was like, she asked me what my favorite song was. He's like, I wasn't going to lie.
He's like, you should ask her what her preferred song was. And it was just a great back and forth because it felt very real.
Yeah, but he was, you could see that's where he struggled socially. And he was just like, but she asked me what my favorite song was. And I told her what my favorite song was. If she wanted to know, she could have told me what her favorite. It was just so funny and so smartly written. And it's just, oh man, I had a lot of fun with this one. It was a good time. Yeah, so in the end, we got an advanced screening of The Accountant 2. It drops in theaters this week. This film is a lot of fun. It really ramps up everything from Accountant 1, where, the humor's elevated, the action's elevated. It's a ton of fun. It's a really good action comedy film that, takes what the first one does well and really cranks it up even further. I'm giving this film a solid 7.5. It's a really good, really well-made movie, and it's not without its pacing problems and a few things like that, but I really got a lot of enjoyment out of this, and for that reason, I have to give it a 7.5.
I think I'm actually going to give it an 8. I had that much fun with it, and a lot of it is because of that dynamic between Ben and John. They play brothers so well. They play off each other so well. Their dynamic, their humor, their comedy and stuff, especially with the kind of straight-laced Christian because of his autism and how he handles stuff, and John Bernthal's overreaction to everything because of how his brother is. They play off each other so well, but when he gets into the action, it's really fantastic. It tells a good story, even though it does get diverted a little bit because of doing the brother dynamic. This film is dealing a lot more with that than kind of the overall story can take a backseat, but it doesn't feel like it's ever too disconnected. But the humor, the action was enough for me to give it an 8 because I had a great time when I ended up coming out of this film. I really enjoyed it. This was a great week for entertainment. But The Accountant 2 will be in theaters this upcoming week. It's well worth a watch. If you've got a great choice between Sinners that came out this past week with Accountant 2 opening up this week. They're both highly worth seeing. A lot of fun to have in the theaters. Action, humor, everything. It was a really fun movie. We recommend checking out when it hits. Early previews on Thursday, opens wide on Friday.
Yeah, definitely one worth going to check out for sure. I want to move us now into our TV review of the week. I've been so excited to talk about this episode since it dropped a couple days ago now. But we have hit the season finale of season 1 of Daredevil Born Again, and we heard all along that this 9th episode was going to be crazy, over the top, and kind of mind-blowing. And in a lot of ways, they were very correct in that prediction. This episode was intense, man. It packed a real heavy punch in this episode. We got a lot of stuff kind of really coming together, and, everything hitting a boiling point with everything we've had coming up so far in this season. And you really get a exploding jump off point to set up the next season with where we leave things off at the end of the episode. But man, let's just dive right in and start talking about it. So the episode picks up right where it leaves off with, Matt being shot by Bullseye at the end of the episode, jumping in front of a bullet for Wilson Fisk, and everybody was like, why did you do this? We still don't really get an answer about that, but you get kind of a flashback to kind of the confirmation of what Matt was suspecting at the end of the last episode, and it was Vanessa who, hired Bullseye to take care of Foggy Nelson. Matt's instincts were correct. Foggy was about to expose a lot of stuff about the, Fisk crime organization, and she hires Bullseye to take out Foggy, so we get some confirmation of that. And then we jump right back into Matt waking up in the hospital and kind of really kicking things off for the rest of the episode from there.
Yeah, because, things are already tough between him and Heather. She's had her suspicions and everything else, so he wakes up in the hospital, and the first name he says, Karen? Mm-hmm. You could see the look and the feeling on Heather's face, okay. And the Kristen's there, and it's it's the drugs, it's the pain and everything else. But he says Karen's name instead of Heather. So Yeah, that's that's gonna go over really well. And again, we're going heavy spoilers. We're talking about everything because we have to. There's so much stuff that happened in this, and Matt ends up telling him, Vanessa was the one who had Foggy killed, that he was getting too close, and Kristen was there that night celebrating with him, so he's trying to get information out of her, and Heather's trying to be the loving, supporting girlfriend, but she has her problems and troubles, so she ends up splitting on him and everything else. So there's definitely a dynamic that's building for season 2 here between them that you definitely see. Like, what I expected to happen in this episode didn't happen with them, but it also set up something really explosive for season 2 between them.
Yeah, that's gonna play out a little bit later when we dive a little further into it. So we kind of jump off at that point to Fisk kind of spiraling a little bit after the attempt on his life, and he's having a conversation with Vanessa, and he's kind of laying out what his plan is for the city now. Like, he's got this safe city initiative that he's trying to roll out that is very restrictive, very much playing into anything he wants to do, and he's going full force ahead with his outlawing vigilantism plan here, and he kind of sets off his task force like, hey, the reins are off for you guys. You guys stop whatever you have to by any means necessary. I'm encouraging the use of lethal force. It's setting off a real tipping point, especially between him and Commissioner Gallo, who is very much like, there's still the rule of law here, man. Like, you're showing me more and more that I know that you're really not this good-intentioned mayor trying to keep the city safe. You're also acting as the kingpin. Like, you've never put this behind you, despite the fact that the mayor kind of calling him out on his BS a little bit. Like, we know you're not the altruistic person even that you even think you might be. Like, we get it, and it just really sets up some stuff for the rest of this episode that we'll get to that just was one of the craziest things I think I've ever seen in a Marvel property, show, product, whatever you want to say. Like, they did not hold back in this episode. They've been good about keeping it, like, violent and cursing and things like that, about keeping in the episode in ways that make sense, but they really turned that up to 11 in this episode.
Yes, we get Fisk after he's basically giving his current plan for the city is... ask what Matt's condition is, and says, a dead hero is better than a live vigilante. So his right-hand man goes to the hospital with the intention to take him out, but, he's waiting, and then we get the start to the chaos. Fisk and his cronies have shut down the power grid to New York City. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going in the dark, but, Matt hears him coming and is able to escape from it, but it really starts off a big chaotic event. We do learn from Fisk through what he says to Vanessa, and then what Matt ends up finding out later is that Red Hook is much more than we expected. He's basically setting up a sovereign state. He's setting up something where there are no laws, there are no anything. He can funnel billions of dollars through Red Hook at will, and no one can do anything about it. They could run their criminal enterprise freely as they want in this port in Red Hook, and no one can say a thing because he's mayor and he has control over everything that's said. So we find out that even though it felt like he was going off in a different direction than Vanessa and kind of ruining their underground crime world, he was actually positioning them to be able to do something that would exponentially increase their cash flow and everything else that they can do and not be legally touched.
Yeah, and do it legitimately. Mm-hmm. Set up a legitimate business. He finds it's kind of criminal genius, honestly, because he finds this legal loophole that allows him to do it, and that's the whole thing that Foggy discovers that ultimately winds up getting, getting him killed for it. Is like he discovered these things and he was going to expose it and try to get it shut down, but. We jump ahead now with Matt escaping. Matt's running, back to his home and is still in his nightgown, really, from the hospital. And then we get Matt just kind of collapsing on his couch for a second. And then you see his face shift because he knows who's in his apartment with him, and we get the return of Frank Castle. Finally, the Punisher's back, but not only is the Punisher back, he looks like the Punisher again. He's clean-shaven. He's got the military-style haircut, like he's back. And
got his vest on.
Yeah, he's got the vest on, like he's ready to rock and roll. And, Matt's like, what are you doing here? And, it's very coyly, Frank's like, hey, like, you're in need of help, obviously. He kind of makes one of the funniest jokes. He's like, what's this? You got a new suit on? What are you, nightgown man now?
That's what I'm laughing about, because it was such a perfectly delivered
so funny with the dynamic between these two. But yeah, Frank's like, hey, I got a call. I was asked to keep you safe and get you out and help you out. And that's like, you want to tell me who called you? I mean, if you know anything about the history with all these guys, you know who called him. But there's a very real threat approaching them. It's the task force that's there to take out, Daredevil and the Punisher here. So this is where the violence and the brutality of this episode really kick off in this. It's a huge fight in Matt's apartment between these task force guys and, Daredevil and Punisher, where you get the dynamic of Frank's like, hey, I'm going to help you, but we're doing it my way. Like, I'm taking these guys out. Matt very much is still his no-kill hero, where he's like, you can't do that. You can't stop it. And Frank's like, I'm helping you. We're doing this my way. And there's just this incredibly brutal, violent fight that happens, when they break into Matt's apartment, where, Frank gets his licks in a lot of ways, and Matt kind of gets his stuff away too. And we get a very interesting reveal at the end of this fight before they have to, jump out of the building, basically, because of this grenade that gets thrown there. We find out the person that was responsible for killing Hector Ayala, and it is Cole, one of the main people on the task force. They find the bullet with the skull engraving, like the Punisher symbol on the bullet that was very prominent. The one they found was used to kill Hector Ayala, and they find out it was Cole. And Frank's first instinct, naturally, is, okay, we know who you killed. You gotta go. And Matt, being Matt, and still holding on to his principles and ideals, like, we can't kill him, he's not worth it. And there's a really interesting dynamic, like, you're willing to take a bullet for even him, you already took one for Fisk, like, and that's like, that's not what I want, he's not worth it, kind of thing. And it's still that dynamic between Castle and Matt that's so fun, like, between them, and the dynamics of how they see the way to get things done necessarily, and it creates a real fun dynamic between them.
Yeah, we talked about the great dynamic between Ben and John in The Accountant 2, which, of course, Ben did play Daredevil at one point, too. Of course, yes. But his chemistry and dynamic with Charlie Cox is fantastic as well, because, as you mentioned, the nightgown line, that already had me laughing when you going, but Matt also had that snark reply of shaving a haircut. Did you do that for me? Like, just going back and forth. And yeah, even with the battles, like, it gets very brutal. Like, Frank is dispatching people, bloody, just killing people. But I did love that, like, Matt steps in, like, you're not going to kill him. We got to step. And Frank just points a gun at one of the other guys on the ground and shoots him a couple times. Like, yeah, hey, we're doing this the right way. I'm me. I'm not stopping what I'm doing. Right. And, they are having that kind of conversation dynamic, and then a grenade's thrown in the room. And so you get the kind of great of Matt jumping out the window with Punisher and he's swinging him down to safety. And we get Karen showing up to kind of save the day. We get this car speeding up, and Karen's back and she's there. And we do learn that Karen is the one that, called, I was going to say John, I called Frank to come back and stuff. And so we end up going back to Frank's lair and kind of revealing some stuff. And you do get to see a great underlying storyline that's still being present, is that, Karen and Frank kind of have a thing. He did this because of her. She asked, he jumped. And you get that back and forth. That he doesn't want to admit that he did it because of her. She's kind of coyly playing with that, I know why you're here and why you're doing this stuff. And they had a great back and forth. And it was great to finally see Karen come back. We only had her in the first episode. I guess the first two. She showed up in the courtroom scene, but very briefly. And so we finally got Karen back. And it was great to see, because her dynamic with Matt, her dynamic with Frank, and everything was so great. And I just love that they continued that storyline of, there's something there between those two, but Frank can't admit it. He doesn't want to admit that he's caring for people again, and he wants to help people, but he can't say that I'm here to help or I care about you. He's got to be the tough, hard guy and everything like it. And again, played so brilliantly by John Bernthal. Like, he is just fantastic. Like, he's so rough, tough. Like, he is the perfect Punisher to me. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
There's different variations in the comics and how it's been portrayed before, but I just feel like when I see him, that's the Punisher.
Absolutely. Just it spot on perfection casting. This show does such a good job of that anyway. Like, all these people playing their roles brilliantly to perfection, and you you get Matt and Karen running off to find these files that Foggy knew about in this storage unit, and they jump to the storage unit, and you get a little bit of a conversation between Matt and Karen where Matt's like, I know what's up. Like, I see, I might not be able to see, but I can tell how you two feel about each other kind of thing. And then also a little funny line is like, I also heard that when you were talking to me, but that had to have been elevated adrenaline too, right? It was pretty funny. Matt's like, I get what's going on. So
I still love them digging through the box and he's finding that placard.
Avocados at law. That was funny. A little throwback to
Bringing that joke back.
The old Netflix
like
stuff.
They said it. They said the
thing. Did the thing. I was so happy to see. That was a fun Easter egg if you were a fan of the original series too. But yeah, I mean, you get this setup, and they're off to the races to try to stop Fisk at this point, and Fisk is full bore like, I'm moving forward. So you have Fisk like taking stock in everybody that works for him. He's like, if you're not fully on board with this plan, you gotta go. Like, if you're not backing me 100%, if you're not all in, you can't go. And he really uses Sheila in this episode very interestingly, the way he kind of manipulates and kind of strong arms her. You could tell you could tell the entire time she's terrified and she wants to do the right thing, but she kind of feels helpless. And you come to find out that, he tells her, he's like, people trust you. I need to use this. Like, figure out who's really riding for me now and who's not. And I need to get rid of the people that aren't on board with this. And, it unfortunately leads to a conversation with Commissioner Gallo, who trying to make this last ditch effort to appeal, talking about like, there's still sane people in this building that don't want Fisk to succeed at this. Like, are you with me? Can I count on you for this? And come to find out that, it's been a ploy by by Fisk this entire time to kind of get what he needs to do to Commissioner Gallo here. And he kind of meets his fate. And one of the most gruesome, incredibly violent things I've ever seen Marvel do up to this point. And that's coming from someone who's seen Deadpool and Wolverine and some of the gruesome violent stuff here. But this one might have even topped the cake on that one, because you get just an insane kill of Commissioner Gallo here, and it's one of the darkest, most violent things I've ever seen Marvel do.
Yeah, Fisk basically led him to the rest of his task force here, and they're in, and he's doing his normal speech and everything else, and you're getting the back and forth, and then he just grabs his head, and you're like, all right, he's gonna break his neck, because we've seen him slam people's head into the doorway and doors and everything else, but no, he basically explodes his head, and it was very gruesome, very insane kill that they did there, and that was wild to see. Like, he proved, I think at that point, that to his task force, you will do what I say as I say it. You're going to meet kind of the same fate. It was a message to the commissioner of taking him out, but also a message to his task force. Like, I'm very serious about what I'm doing and how I do things. And if you're not with me, you're dead.
Just insane, brutal moment. Like, it was jarring. It was intense. It was something I wasn't expecting them to go as far as they did with it. But you just see the state of mind that Fisk is in. He truly feels like he's untouchable, and he feels like he's doing the right thing for not only New York. Like, I think that's more, you could see that being more of a front for how he really feels. Like, he's doing this out of greed, out of spite, like just kind of wanting to take over everything. And it was just one of the most intense things I've ever seen ever on a show or movie that Marvel's done yet. And kudos to them for like just really pushing the gravity of this moment where he's like, okay, everybody here is on board, and you get just them moving forward from this to kind of continue to take stock of other people in the city. Like, hey, are you with me? He's sending out Daniel and Buck to talk to the city council, like the speaker and everything.
Airing their dirty laundry. Like, oh, you're against this? Well, what about this, this, and this?
Right. Like, can we count on your support now? Like, or we're going to expose the corrupt things you've done. And it's just, you just see where they're strong arming and taking everything from there for sure.
Yeah, and then we get Frank, so he didn't go with Karen and Matt. He stayed back in his lair because he's like, well, he did his favor to Karen. That's kind of his part.
Got his own agenda.
But he listens over the radio that he knows that Red Hook. He ends up going to Red Hook on his own by himself, and he comes face to face with the vigilante task force that are all wearing his skull, dressed as him. They idolize him and everything else, and he goes and just brutally dispatches 10, 15 of them before they finally capture him, and they attack and beat. But you also get a great scene with him and Pal, where Pal, they've got him tied up, and Pal's monologuing that you can join us. They idolize you, they look up to you, and Frank's like,
he's like, I do.
Do they know who I am, of what I'm about? Like, he just kind of goes off on the kind of people they are and just tells them, like, he's facing potential death and he's still just going to lay it out raw and unfiltered.
No
like,
cares.
No, this is not how it is. I'm not like you. You're not like me. You need to just telling him off while he's potentially could be killed because of what he says.
Yeah, it's a really powerful moment from him because he's like, hey, you think you know the reasons why I do what I do, but you've never felt the pain that I've felt. You've never experienced the loss that I've lost. Like, you really just see like that anguish and pain in his eyes that kind of lights that fire, that anger that he lives with and that he carries with it. Makes him such a really interesting and compelling character to begin with. Like, if you know anything about the story of Frank Castle, if you've never seen the Punisher show, stop this and go watch it. Like this, it's so good, so well done. I'm so looking forward to the standalone stuff that he's got coming up. But he basically gives these guys the middle finger, like, hey, like you guys aren't good here. You guys aren't righteous. Like he feels very much that he's in the right, using these brutal means to stop people by any means necessary. And you're not the same as me. You're not doing what I do, why I do it, and how I do it. Like, you guys are, if I had use of both my hands, I'd take you all out and keep coming after you until I win. But, they kind of see that it's hopeless at this point, and they kind of rough him up again. And, you jump away from that even, and you start to see Fisk really winning here, where he's, getting things in place with the way he wants. And then you cut to this really powerful scene too, where you have Matt and Karen going to Red Hook, essentially going down to the port, and Matt is full blown like, I'm ready to go take the fight to these guys. And thank God he had Karen with him in this moment, because they have a really heartfelt conversation where Matt's still kind of reeling from getting shot and recovering from that, and not fighting and getting his butt kicked for most of this episode at this point. And he's ready to just dive right back in and do it. And Karen's like, what do you hope to accomplish here? Like, are you wanting to just take the fight directly to them? You can fight, but you're going to die when you go in there. You can't stop them yourself. Like, they have an army, which is kind of alluding to where we're going here. This is a really cool way that they're starting to kind of wrap up this episode. And it's like, hey, is this what you want? Like, do you want to like murder yourself here? Like, do you want to win? This isn't how you win. Mm-hmm. And Matt, you could just kind of tell he's just kind of taking what she's saying and introspecting and thinking and processing. And they do a really powerful job of telling it, where he's just kind of looking up, and he was like, he says a really cool line that kind of throws back to the original. He's like, remember when you asked me if all I saw was darkness and everything, and I told you it was like seeing 1,000 burning suns at the same time. He was like, I've made this mistake of thinking I was immune to darkness, and like comes the realization, it's like, hey, I'm going to win. I'm going to take the city back. To do it, I'm going to need an army too. And I was just like, yes, let's go. Big fight. Like, it's really setting up some really powerful stuff for season 2. And now you see, like, okay, he's pausing. He's like, okay, Fisk might win today, but he's not going to win in the long run, kind of thing. And that's where they go to start regrouping. And that's where this episode kind of starts to wrap up from there.
As we get the morning has come, the power's back on, and Fisk is having a press conference talking to the people of New York, and he's basically laying down, you're under martial law now that you have a curfew. I'm in charge. The task force is in charge. You are going to listen and do everything I say. He's basically showing that I've won. I'm in control. I'm in power. Everything is mine now, and you're going to listen. He blames it all on vigilantes. He takes, nothing is his fault. Everything's vigilantes' fault. And we also get one scene that I alluded to in the beginning of how are Matt and Heather moving forward. Well, Fisk ends up asking Heather to become the head of mental health, the commissioner of mental health. And she accepts very quickly going forward, even though Matt had warned her at the ball so much that you cannot trust Fisk. He is a dangerous, terrible, horrible man. She accepts nearly immediately. She barely even thinks about it. She accepts it right away, which is setting up that yeah, that dynamic for season 2 between them, is she end up going to become an enemy of Matt? Is, their relationship pretty much, that almost looks like that's the end of their relationship.
Yeah, like it's kind of unraveling,
yeah, it's definitely unraveled. That, that was something I wasn't expecting. Like, I was actually expecting that Heather was going to meet her end by Fisk or the task force or something else, but instead she's joining with him.
Yeah, and it's setting up a very interesting dynamic there, like you said, for season 2. But we get to the end of the episode here, and you see Fisk and Vanessa kind of walking towards what's going to be a meal that they're, kind of reveling in their victory. And as they're walking to this meal, they're walking down through a corridor that you've seen in previous episodes. Now they have these cages set up, and you see people in there like, who are in these cages? Well, you see a lot of these people that are very much against Fisk and have been vocal against him. You see Jack the swordsman in a cage, just kind of sitting there staring at him. You see a couple other people who have been very vocally against Fisk as well, and then you get to the last cage, and it's Frank Castle extra chained up in the cage, just kind of staring down Fisk as he walks by. And you get the captured Frank Castle. He's got the Punisher in a cage. You seemingly see all this doom and gloom. They go out and have this victory dinner where they're very smugly cheering each other, and just set to the dramatic music. And then you get a really cool cut to Josie's, where Matt is there in his Daredevil costume, without the mask on yet, kind of in a back room at Josie's. You don't know it's Josie's yet until he walks out and sees it, but you're in Josie's, and he's talking to Karen. He's like, we gotta do this right. We gotta get this. And he's coming to that realization fully that, he thought he was immune to the darkness, but he's gotta embrace that too. And Karen was like, kind of gives him a little bit of extra inspiration. Like, Foggy knew this about you. He knew you were both. He knew you were light and dark, and he accepted you and he loved you anyway. And it was kind of like, this is the justification you need to move forward with what you do.
Foggy believed in you. I believe in you. Yeah. We're with you.
Yeah, like, we're with you. Let's do this. And so he opens the door. He's got the mask back on. He opens the door. Karen walks out with him, and you see a little bit of a grouping of people here. You see Josie at the bar, kind of alluding to the fact that I think she's kind of known that Matt's been Daredevil this entire time, just never really acknowledged it on screen. But I'm like,
she knows her patrons.
Yeah, she knows her patrons very well. Like, she's got a pretty good, like, she's got to be one of the only intelligent people in the city that knows that Matt's Daredevil, just by the fact that she's seen him as many times and can put 2 and 2 together. But you get Cherry there, which was a cool scene to see, because Cherry's been kind of like in and out with like helping Matt as Daredevil, but it looks like he's back in the fold. You see some cops there, see a couple other people in the mix too that you've seen throughout the season, and he gives this rousing speech to them, like, hey, we're believing in the 3 R's here. It's rebuild, rebel. Like, there was 3 R's. I forget what the 3rd R was for. It was a very powerful moment. And he's like, this is our city, not his. Like, it has to be a city without fear.
You're the city without fear.
You get this really cool, like, going through like a little hole in the glass, and you see the light just flashing on Daredevil in the red costume, and it cuts to black. And that's the end of the episode, save for a teaser that you get. You get a mid-credit scene in this episode.
Poor Anthony.
Poor Anthony, indeed. But you cut to the Punisher in his cell talking to one of the guards, Anthony, who is a very big Punisher fan, and he's just playing it cool. Hey, respect, shake your hand.
Shake my hand.
Yeah, he goes, and for whatever reason, this guard gives him his hand, and he just smashes his head up against basically kills him, takes his keys, and you get what alludes to Frank Castle breaking out, which is obviously going to lead into what the Punisher standalone stuff is going to do. And now you get to speculate what's going to happen in season 2. So we get to the end. It was an incredible season, and I want to kind of kick it off by talking about a little extra ahead. I haven't seen the stuff on the internet that's been kind of low-key spoiled about season 2 so far, and I know you have, but I have a theory, and this is what I'm really hoping happen, because they've been really good about giving us fan service here, and the rumors have been flying about them anyway. They've alluded to it. I want to see a return of, if you don't get all 3 of them, at least 2 of the 3, give me the Defenders back to help Matt in this situation. Because really, if you're thinking about it, if you're outlawing vigilantism, all street-level versions of it, you not only have the Defenders possibly in play here. There's also a certain web-slinging superhero that's back to fighting street crime level 2 that I would love to see make a cameo in season 2 as well, that depending on how they're going about it in the movie, you're going to get Daredevil season 2 before Spider-Man 4 comes out. So maybe there's a possibility you could have a Tom Holland cameo in it. I don't know how exactly that would work. That's a pipe dream, but can you give me the Defenders in season 2 of Daredevil, please and thank you?
And that's where the internet has been the internet, as usual stuff. Like, oh, Matt says he needs an army, and what he has is Cherry and a couple cops. Like, you realize they're not going to throw all their cards out on the table here right away. Like, he's going to need support from many different areas, but yeah, you're setting up potentially for Defender, of course. Where's Spider-Man? Where's Defenders while New York was under siege? Well, a lot of that can be real-world stuff that we know that there's contract issues with Sony, that he can only appear the appearances that Sony has agreed to, which makes it very hard for him to appear in TV because they'd have to pay extra and sign on for other rights and stuff, which you figure it has to potentially get there, because we also talked about Vincent D'Onofrio has said that his Kingpin is the same way, that they own the TV rights of him, or the film rights, so he can be on TV, but they can't be on film unless they sign something. So there has to be some new agreement done between Sony and Marvel to get that done. We also know Tom Holland is very busy. He's had the, filming the Odyssey, which we know this was filmed a while back, but there's a lot of real life logistics that go into them not appearing right away. But we have almost every single person saying that they want to come back. You have Kristen Ritter has always said, like, just call me Marvel. Yes. Like, she's always wearing Daredevil or Jessica Jones stuff when she's working out. And, she ended up traveling to New York right when Daredevil Born Again season 2. She's like, oh, just on my way to New York. Like, you've got to tease everybody. Even Mike Coulter put up that she's reading Kristen's book that she just put out, as did Matt, or as Charlie Cox did, showing that he's reading her book and stuff. There's a lot of hints, with people. And you've got basically all of them saying, bring us back and we'll do it. Like, put me in, we're ready. So let's go. I do have a huge feeling that the Defenders, some, if not all, will be in season 2. I
gotta have it. I just need it at this point. Like, the show is so freaking good, man. The way they ended it, just an incredible last episode. Like, if you're expecting big shock moments, like, I don't think you were gonna get that in this episode, but you didn't need it, man. This did such a good job of kind of putting a bow on certain things and really setting up the stakes for a follow-up season. Like, you could tell where these new writers have their hands all in on this now, and you can see where they're wanting to go. And I'm really excited to see the direction they go, because there's so many things in play here. You have this relationship dynamic between Matt and Heather now that's unraveling, to put it lightly, if not going to be completely severed altogether when he finds out that she accepted this position with Fisk, and how that's going to play into things. But you got Matt going all out to stop, and a potential love interest in the way is not going to stop him from getting it. And we got to see what kind of fate that gives her in season 2. But I love it.
Matt and Kristen's relationship, because she says once this is all over, we need to have a big, serious conversation.
Absolutely, you've got that dynamic to play out too. You've also got, and I'm so happy that they have her back. You have Karen Page back in the fold. She's fantastic. She was one of the heart and soul beats of the Netflix series. Having her back here as a potential aren't they gonna get back together thing with her and Matt, obviously, with
or her and
Frank even. But you still got a lot of things in play for season 2 and how they really do it. There's also a very interesting shot at the end of season 1 that we didn't talk about there, but you see Hector's niece in one of the shots kind of looking back over her shoulder at the police. Is she going to take up this White Tiger mantle in season 2? That's been something that's been discussed by people too. And, is that going to help? Obviously there's been some strong rumors that she's going to be part of that Young Avengers group anyway. Like, that's going to be a fun thing to see how they play out in that. Who else could show up? Who else is going to be involved in this? We don't know, but there's a lot of fun directions they could go in season 2 now.
As I mentioned, I believe it was in the last episode, we've had the swordsman show up in Hawkeye and show up in here, but we haven't really seen him as a swordsman. Is the swordsman, Frank gets him, maybe he gets him out of the cage and he joins up, and now, he's going to be a vigilante part of this army, and we finally get the swordsman to be the swordsman. He could be one of the army. If they end up having to replace one of the defenders, well, maybe there's your kind of replace him as a swordsman. You've already set him up. He's there. Use him as a vigilante.
They're going to need him anyway. This battle is going to be about the battle for New York here, the heart and soul of New York City. It's going to be a big fight. He's going to need all hands on deck. So I'm excited to see who they bring into the fold to kind of help him with it. And that's going to be the big fun part of season 2. And we got confirmation that season 2 is actually going to come out next March. So it's not going to be a huge wait. It's going to be about a year in between the start of season 1 and the beginning of season 2, which I'm so thankful it's not going to be super delayed at this point. They're already full bore into shooting. Tons of spoilers I've heard are all over the internet. I'm actively trying to avoid them here. But
there's one I've seen that I know you're going to be excited about. I'm not going to go any more information than that, but I know you're going to be excited about it.
Yeah, I'm all in ready for it, sure. And I'm sure I'll see some comments before the season drops that it'll wind up getting spoiled for me one way or another.
But yeah, season 2 is going to be interesting because it is going to be coming out right before a lot of stuff. You have the 4th Spider-Man film. You have Doomsday. Yeah. You have Secret Wars being set up in the next year. Maybe, if we do get season 3 before Secret Wars, there's a lot that they have to be setting up because it is MCU now. It is Daredevil MCU. It's in there. And again, I get the discourse of not having Spider-Man show up and something big like this is happening, but that's real world stuff and not outside. If they could have used them, I would say they would have used them. And hopefully we do. Because we got Charlie Cox showing up in the last Spider-Man film. We got Peter Parker and Matt together, but we want Daredevil and Spider-Man. We want full suits for both of them working together and doing something. Because that is a hard dynamic when you have something as big and connected as the MCU, and when you're bringing something like the Netflix series, which was connected but disconnected, and you're trying to bring it back together, is that you have so many things to try to connect while you're trying to do your own thing. Like, majority of the main characters that we deal with Fantastic Four and X-Men and Spider-Man, it's New York City. So how do you have something huge happen inside the city and you don't have them be a part of it? Of course, we know the Fantastic Four that we're being introduced to is coming from a different reality. We don't know exactly yet until we get Fantastic Four this summer how and at what point they're going to come into the MCU reality from their reality. We don't know exactly where they're going into. We don't know exactly where the X-Men are going to coming into. Are they going to be like the Fantastic Four and that they're coming from a different universe into this universe and they haven't really been present and part of it? Like, we don't know how that dynamic, and so that's something that they do have to keep in mind for Daredevil. Like, you're connected now, so you have a lot of different heroes and villains and stuff within this city. How do you try to tell a self-contained story when you have all these characters that could be a part of it? And that's a hard dynamic because you don't want to take away from what you're trying to tell with Matt, with Daredevil, with Fisk, while including so many other characters potentially. And it makes me really curious exactly what we're going to get in season 2. Do we get some characters we don't expect? Because maybe that'll set up something for Doomsday. We don't know yet if Charlie Cox will show up in Doomsday or Secret Wars. We have a feeling if after 7 years they're bringing Daredevil back and gave him his own series, that he's got to be showing up at least Secret Wars. But we don't exactly know what the plans are for Daredevil going forward. So it's that hard thing. You're trying to tell a self-contained story, but you're now part of a bigger universe.
Yeah, and that's the fun part. And I know logistically it's tough to pull some of these things off, and you still have to find ways to create stakes. Because in a perfect world where you have access to everyone, you have somebody like Kingpin trying to jump in and gain power. Well, somebody like Thor could come in and take him out in 2 seconds. And what's the fun in telling that story, right? Yeah. So you kind of got to suspend a little bit of logic, just a little tiny bit, to make it make sense and have stakes to make it compelling television and compelling story. But you could throw some of that practicality out the window. It's comic book stuff at the end of the day, guys. Jesus
it would have been
Christ,
fun to see a couple task force members webbed up to a building. You don't see it happen, but you're just going down the street and you just saw a couple guys webbed up. That would have been a fun little inclusion. You didn't have to show them. you can show webs. Sony doesn't own the rights to webs, but you could have shown them. But that also creates a precedence like, oh, Spider-Man's here, Spider-Man's coming. Well, we don't know if we can get the rights of Spider-Man to come over here.
That's why they don't tease it. Yeah. Which makes it difficult. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be so fun. I cannot wait to get my eyes on season 2 now that we've got through season 1. Very easily going to go back and, just re-binge it again. And I try to watch each episode at least once, if not twice, before we record, so and kind of come in and talk about it. But yeah, definitely want to go back and watch the entire thing all over again, because I'm so happy that we got these characters back. We got the actors back who played them to begin with, and it's just fun to kind of take the story that we had and move it forward and incorporate it into the new MCU. And I'm so happy with the job they did.
Yeah, so Daredevil Born Again season 1, I'm probably going to give it an 8.5. Overall, like it did have some issues and some of the story. Like I felt like, even though I loved White Tiger, that was kind of very short story, because we know the actor passed away, but we don't know how much of that factored into filming, because he passed away a little bit after filming. You also had Muse, which, while it was done great, it was a couple episodes. It was done really quickly, wrapped up, and we also know that there was a lot of reshoots and changes because of creative teams changes, and I could feel that. I wasn't exactly going in and looking for that, but you could feel that, and that's kind of why I give it 8.5, because the original Netflix Daredevil series is a 10 to me. Like, even though it had some problems and issues of itself, it did such a great job overall handling the Daredevil character in that universe that it deserved a 10, and I think 8.5 for this first season to me is pretty fair with the kind of the issues in the creative, like the last 2 episodes being done by the creative team, and those are 9-10 episodes.
Absolutely.
That they did really fantastic. Makes me really hopeful that the next season is going to be like a 9.5 to me out of 10, because it did feel like it felt like they had to wrap up a whole lot of what the other team did, and now they're able to start moving forward with their own thing.
Yeah, you can start to see the shift in these last 2 episodes back towards what you can see kind of creatively where they're wanting to go with the show now, and direction they're wanting to go moving forward. And that elevates it from what the entire season was. I think an 8.5 score is very fair. I'll give it the same score with the caveat of the momentum they have from these last couple episodes into the next season. I'm fully expecting a 9.5 to a 10 for next season.
Absolutely.
Just based on the quality of the stuff we were getting in the last 2 episodes, where they really took off and hit the ground running here with the new content that they were able to kind of fully tell the story in the way they want to tell it. And you could see kind of that tonal shift that happened, and a little bit of that disjointedness kind of drug it down just a little bit at the beginning for me, but it's still good television. It's still a good story. It's still fun. You get some shorter, not longer arcs, kind of side villains like, Muse, who at his core is a cool character, but was he completely needed for this entire story? Who knows? But it was a cool little villain to throw in on the side that they did discard very quickly, which I felt like there could have been a little more meat on the bone in that one. Maybe had some interaction with Fisk at some point that we never really got from that character, just to kind of see. But that I think they could have handled a little bit better. So it kind of knocked it down a little, just a smudge to an 8.5 for me. Like, if you take that dynamic out of it, I probably would have given it a 9.5 even, because it's still a really good story. They don't hold back on the violence, the brutality in it, which is needed for a show like this and the characters that you're dealing with. Like, you don't get a lot of the supernatural, fantastical elements that you get from a lot of these other comic book characters, because these are more grounded, real, street-level human beings fighting with, somewhat enhanced abilities, and that's kind of what you're dealing with here, and they do it in such a good way that I'm really excited for the direction that Season 2 is going in, and I'm so glad we don't have to wait as long to get it.
So great to see just how quickly they fell back into the characters. It's been 7+, even if you think about when filming, it might have been more like 7-8 years since they last played these characters. And Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio, Deborah Ann Wool, all of them did. They were just right back. John Bernthal right back as Punisher. Like, they just fell right back into the characters. Even Foggy, even though we got a little bit of Foggy in, which we didn't fully talk about, there was no real extra resolution with Foggy in this episode. We didn't get to see was his death faked? Is he still around? Now, that could be something for Season 2. That could have been something that got left to the wayside because of the change of stuff. It's hard in a comic book movie, because if you don't see a body, no one's really fully ever dead. Like, we know the commissioner's dead because we saw that brutally and stuff. But if you don't, normally in a action film or a comic book movie, if you don't see a body, there's no saying that they're fully legitimately dead. So that could be another interesting storyline for season 2 if they decide that they're going to bring you, because if you know the comics that we can talk about now, there is a storyline in the comics where Foggy faked his death and went into witness protection. That could be something that they bring into season 2 and bring him back finally. It could be at the very end of season 2 to set something up for season 3, but there is storylines in the comics that does lead to Foggy coming back.
If they decide to go that route and utilize it. I want it to make sense, though. I don't want them just to do it to, give us a little warm and fuzzy. Don't get me wrong, I'll be ecstatic to see Foggy Nelson back on my screen, but it needs to be in a way that practically makes sense. And maybe it's one of those like, hey, I got a little too close to it for my own protection. They moved me out, didn't tell anybody, didn't tell you. I'm still alive. But they had a funeral for the guy. Like, did they get to see the body at the funeral? We don't know. Was it closed casket? Was it open? Like, we don't know. So there was some things that we just weren't given that we kind of have to poke questions at and draw our own conclusions for. But yeah, they could play into that story. And if they do, I hope they do it in a way that makes sense. But oh boy, give me this battle and give it to me now, man. I need those defenders to show up. I need all those characters coming in. I need it now, and it's such a good story. I love Daredevil. Daredevil is one of my favorite comic book heroes ever, and the show and Charlie Cox has done such a brilliant job of bringing him to life in a way that kind of washes out, the Ben Affleck Daredevil. I almost said Ben Affleck Batman. That's a whole other can of worms and a whole other conversation. But Ben Affleck likes to take and some people consider ruin some of my favorite comic book characters. But yeah, like this iteration of Daredevil, just incredible, immaculate. I love Charlie Cox's Daredevil, and I hope he plays him until he's 90. Disney, like, can we do that? If you're gonna do it with
Jackman,
you, if you're gonna do it with you,
years old.
do it with Charlie Cox. But we'll see where the direction of the show goes. I'm so excited.
And I sent you an image the other day, which I want to talk about because it was so hysterical when you talk about just how good Charlie Cox is Matt. Is there's a behind the scenes photo at the ball, and you've got Vincent. He's like just celebrating his Fisk, and everyone's laughing and smiling. And then you see Charlie Cox, and you can tell he's like looking distantly into nowhere because he looks like he's still Matt. He's still Daredevil. Everyone else is being themselves, and Charlie's just there like, yeah, I'm still Matt right now. I'm still Daredevil. I'm not Charlie Cox again. It just shows the commitment and love that they all had for these characters. Like, John has spoken out about how they were treating Punisher with that initial creative team, as did Charlie, as did Vincent. They all spoke about how they didn't feel what they were doing with the characters and the story was right. And it's great to see them have such commitment and love. And I hope all of them get to play it for a very long time, and all of them get to show up in Secret Wars. That's what I'm hoping.
They have to.
Can we get Punisher and Daredevil showing up with the rest of the MCU? Like, give us that dynamic.
We have to. Those are characters that are so integral to all these other stories anyway that you want to do. It feels crazy that we haven't gotten them integrated yet, but future's bright. Hopefully they get a chance to, make further appearances beyond that. But Daredevil Born Again Season 1 is out on Disney Plus now. The entire season's out. Go check it out. Come to our social media posts. Let us know what you think of this season if you've been watching along weekly like we have. What are some of your favorite moments? What are you looking forward to in season 2? Let us know. We'd love to have that conversation with you.
So coming up this week is the film that we got an earlier review of that you can go back in this episode and see what we thought, is The Accountant 2. We also have Until Dawn, which is a adaptation of the horror video game, which is going to be kind of interesting. It was one of the more kind of wild, interesting, unique kind of horror games because of how it presents itself. And so it's going to be really really interesting to see how they did with that one. We also have Cheech and Chong's last movie, which I don't think that needs any introduction, because I think even if you're very young, I think just about everybody knows who Cheech and Chong is by now.
Absolutely.
And we also have the 20th anniversary re-release of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, out this week, along with the family adventure film, The Legend of Ochi. So there's a lot to see. Even if you don't want to see something new, you can go check out Episode 3 again. But we do highly recommend checking out The Accountant 2.
Yeah, that's definitely one worth checking out too. We're excited to watch Until Dawn coming up this week. That's another fun one. It's gonna be interesting to see how they incorporate, elements of the game that were more choose your own adventure that you can adapt into film, and we'll see what it looks like. It feels kind of like a Groundhog Day horror film, if that's the easiest way I could kind of describe it by the way the movie looks. Yeah, You never know. Like he could play a monster in this film. We'll see. We'll see if he does. But excited to check that one out for sure.
Over on the streaming side, apparently Tom Hardy doesn't sleep because he's got yet another project like what Mobland just premiered not too long ago. He had Venom late last year that came out. Now he's got another show on Netflix here that is a crime drama with Forrest Whitaker and Timothy Olyphant. That'll be on Netflix on April 25th.
Called Havoc.
So yeah, it's called Havoc. Just when does Tom Hardy sleep?
He doesn't, and it's probably what makes him as good of an actor as he does.
On demand, we have Ash, which is a sci-fi horror film that I've heard a lot of great things about, and I've really been looking forward to see. It just wasn't playing around us here. That's on April 22nd. And another one that we didn't get to check out, but I'm really looking forward to seeing, is a Paul Rudd and Ortega horror comedy Death of a Unicorn. That will be out on April 29th.
Yeah, another one that had a very, very short stint in the theaters, and one that hopefully we get our eyes on when it comes out on demand. It looks really good. I've heard good things about it. I want to check it out for sure.
And we're going to be heading from one fantastic TV series and Daredevil wrapping up to a potential another fantastic series in Andor. So we have season 2. It is going to be the final season. We have the first 3 episodes out on Disney Plus this week on April 22nd. Really looking forward to see how they wrap that up. It's the first season was some of the best Star Wars. I mean, Rogue One was one of the best Star Wars movies that have been put out because it did things so differently. It went dramatic. It went dark. It went spy and espionage. It's just done really well. Like, not a whole lot can compare to the original, but when you're talking about the more recent Star Wars stuff, it has been one of the best ones that they've put out, and it can still stand up as being one of the top Star Wars films because they did such a fantastic job. And Andor season 2, from all the hype and the talk that's been around it, it looks like they're continuing on from what they did in season 1 in a very good way.
Yeah, I like how they're rolling it out too, because it's 12 episodes, but it's only coming out 4 weeks, like 4 weeks worth of shows. It's every 3 episodes. It seems like every week you're getting a 3 episode story arc, and then it's doing a time jump to the next week. So every week is going to be a time jump with 3 episodes. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the course of, the next 4 weeks, and how it ultimately winds up wrapping up, leading into what was, Rogue One, the Star Wars movie that we said it's a good movie. I know there's some Star Wars fans that put it near the bottom of their list, which is crazy. It's a fantastic movie. The show is amazing as well. Andor's season 1 was incredible. Go back and check that one out. Get caught up before this comes out, and just get ready for this ride. It's going to be a lot of fun.
We also have the final season of You. Season 5 will be on Netflix on April 24th. That's one I've heard a ton about, but I've never gotten around to watching it. Again, there might be one. There's a lot of series I don't get around to watching until it's done, and then I can just binge watch everything it does. I've heard great things, but it's for the fans of it, it's wrapping up here starting this month.
Yeah, that show's got a really strong fan base, so getting a 5th season of anything on Netflix is a big deal. So definitely check that one out when it drops.
And for my kids, because they're still so obsessed with Pokemon, as most of the world is, Pokemon Horizon Season 2 on Netflix will be dropping on April 25th.
Multi-billion-dollar franchise, it's got video games and everything. It's just mega popular. It shows no signs of slowing down anytime soon. So that's another one worth checking out for sure.
Yeah, you got grown adults going to Costco and rating all the cards still to this day of money, and the value of those cards are still ridiculous. I'm even playing multiple mobile games of Pokemon with my kids because it's everywhere and everything.
Makes me wish I'd kept my original set of cards, because we had a whole card book full of them that probably would have been worth a pretty good amount of money had we been able to keep them in the condition that we had them in. But, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Coming up next week, we are going to be reviewing the new horror film Until Dawn. Excited to check that one out. And we're going to be reviewing the first 3 episodes of Season 2 of Andor. Excited to get our eyes on all of that. Check it out and bring it to you next week. But until then, I'm Josh. He's Brad. And we'll see you next time.